When it comes to what Christians believe about God, we have to be honest. The best that we can do is scratch the surface in our attempts to understand Him. And there's a good reason for that. It's because God is entirely different from us. He's distinct, different, and not just because He is one in essence while also existing as three persons. It's more than that. And if you had to use one word to describe God, it would be infinite. This is a catch-all word that, at least conceptually, describes the absolute lack of boundaries or constraints on God's qualities and His existence, or rather, the kinds of boundaries and constraints that define our existence as human beings. And the way that Christians throughout history have tried to understand this is by illustrating God's infiniteness in a few overarching ways. The first is to say that God is everywhere, unconstrained by time and space because He exists outside of both. And if you've ever heard the word omnipresent, that's what it means. God is with us all the time, even when we don't realize it or we act as though He weren't. And if the thought of that creeps you out or it makes you a bit paranoid, we should probably talk about that. The second thing that we say is that God knows everything. So we use the word omniscient to describe this, which means God has perfect and complete knowledge of the past, present, and future. It also means that there isn't anything that He can't know. Nothing is hidden from Him. And again, if you're concerned about that, we might want to talk about why. The third thing that we say is that God can do anything. He is all-powerful or omnipotent, capable of doing anything and everything that conforms to His nature, character, and decrees. And this is where we see the only kind of constraint that exists upon God. The only thing God cannot do is not be God. He cannot negate His godness. So it's not possible for Him to act against His nature or character. He can't violate His own decrees. And before you ask, no, He cannot create a boulder so big that He cannot lift it. These three fundamental truths about God remind us that He is not like us. And not only us, but everyone and everything in the universe, including the universe itself. He is entirely other or transcendent, which is another fancy way of saying that God is above and beyond His creation. The God who made the world, the God with no beginning and no end, is not a part of this world, and the world is also not a part of Him. But that doesn't mean that God is not involved with the world. Just the opposite, in fact. God is deeply and personally involved and invested in the events of this world. In fact, God delights to be involved with us, down to the most minute details of our lives. And this is what Christian teachers throughout history have described as God's immanence, His nearness to us. He takes a loving, hands-on role in our lives, from our very formation in the womb to providing for our needs and so much more. But the most incredible example of His immanence? Jesus, God the Son, became a human being, became like one of us so that He might redeem us. Now, even trying to wrap our heads around this or any aspect of God's nature can feel like a lost cause sometime. I mean, we're talking about God here. But even though it's difficult to grasp, that doesn't mean that we should give up trying. Instead, God's infiniteness should inspire us to wonder, to be in awe of this God who's so unlike us and yet draws near us. A God who cannot be surprised or caught off guard, who cannot be overpowered or overwhelmed, who is always with us and even in the darkest times and places. This is who God is, and as you explore these truths for yourselves, I hope that what you discover about Him leads you to delight in this God who is infinitely greater and yet nearer to us than you can imagine.